This is Transqat, a safe space to stand. Transgender issues, queer people, respectful conversations. I'm host Claire McCarthy. Welcome to Transqat. A few initial thoughts about the murder of a well-known podcaster and political activist. My initial reaction to the shooting was not generous. Not surprising, since this individual made his $12 million fortune by demeaning and othering trans people, among others. He was very successful, exponentially more so in terms of money and followers than Transqat will ever be at monetizing the culture wars. The modus operandi for which he is best known is staging pseudo-debates with college students. And in this, he gleefully exposes their naivete and youthful passion and packages their outrage as entertainment. Liberal tears, if you will. A skilled communicator versus a 20-year-old poli-sci major. It was satirical. Very similar to what The Daily Show's correspondents have been doing since 1999. Except, The Daily Show is clearly packaged as comedy, and it appears on Comedy Central. This man's work was adopted by the manosphere and the magosphere as journalism and truth-speaking. It was neither. It was entertainment. And like the gladiatorial contests in ancient Rome, this sort of entertainment speaks volumes about what's wrong at the heart of a culture. When I heard the news of the shooting, as I say, my first reaction was unkind. My second thought was a desire to rewatch talk radio, the Oliver Stone adaptation of Eric Bogosian's play about a shock jock in Texas. I'll let Bogosian's character, Barry Champlain, have the final words.
Believe it or not, you make perfect sense to me. I should hang. I'm a hypocrite. I ask for sincerity and I lie. I denounce the system as I embrace it. I want money and power and prestige. I want ratings and success. I don't give a damn about you or the world. That's the truth. For this, I could say I'm sorry, but I won't. Why should I? I mean, who the hell are you anyways, you audience? You're on me every night like a pack of wolves because you can't stand facing what you are and what you've made. Yes, the world is a terrible place. Yes, cancer and garbage disposals will get you. Yes, a war is coming. Yes, the world is shut to hell and you're all goners. Everything's screwed up and you like it that way, don't you? You're fascinated by the gory details. You're mesmerized by your own fear. You revel in floods, car accidents, unstoppable diseases. You're happiest when others are in pain. That's where I come in, isn't it? I'm here to lead you by the hand through the dark forest of your own hatred and anger and humiliation. I'm providing a public service. You're so scared. You're like a little child under the covers. You're afraid of the boogeyman, but you can't live without him. Your fear, your own lives have become your entertainment. Marvelous technology is at our disposal. And instead of reaching up to new heights, we're trying to see how far down we can go. How deep into the muck we can immerse ourselves. What do you want to talk about? Baseball scores? Your pet orgasms? You're pathetic. I despise each and every one of you. You got nothing. Absolutely nothing. No brains, no power, no future, no hope, no God. The only thing you believe in is me.
Lucian Keagle is a young author and illustrator. We met at North Adams Pride this summer, up in northern Berkshire County in Massachusetts. It was an incredibly windy night. Most of the vendors spent the night holding their tents in place. And despite the weights I had secured to mine, my pop-up tent was lifted into the air and smashed against the curb of Main Street, fatally damaging its legs. Rest in peace, pop-up tent. Lucian was tabling next to me, selling stacks of his graphic novel, and as a longtime fan of comics, I was excited to invite him onto the show. Enjoy.
There we go. So it does look
like you're in a gym. I can see the high ceiling behind you. Like,
Yep.
oh, look at this. Oh, very cool.
These are my
Stadium seating.
classmates. I like to bring the whimsy. My name is Lucian Keagle. I use he, they pronouns, and I am a writer, an actor, and an artist.
We should probably start with your protagonist. Tell us about Clementine. And please, this is Sun, Transqat's chief financial officer. And she'll be joining us apparently.
She looks very good at her job.
Yeah. So tell me about Clem.
Clem is a junior in high school who likes supporting her friends, likes being around people, but she doesn't fully understand the topics that were discussed in the book. And my creative process, I normally just start writing and see where it goes. So her character was initially just someone to give all this information to, but as the story progressed, she ended up obviously becoming her own person with her own opinions and kind of bouncing off of what the characters were saying. So like she became an actual person,
Well, I liked the fact that she is not instantly an ally, not instantly somebody who either has the information that she needs or that she's necessarily receptive to that. But I've got to imagine that comes with a risk, right? Of, is this character going to appeal to your readers?
I think a lot about having conversations with people. I haven't had a lot of conversations with people about this topic who have necessarily disagreed with me. But I think a lot about people have very strong opinions, even if they don't realize it. Like they are their own person. And just because someone says, well, this is my experiences, they're not going to be receptive to that, at least immediately. And I wanted a character that foremost was realistic in that sense. And I also had her become or be skeptical because of that, and also because I wanted her to be able to ask questions. And Clementine is a very headstrong individual, so because of that, she's not afraid to be rude. And I think that was what this story needed to move forward.
Well, I thought that was a great idea because some people who are not in the queer community and maybe don't have contacts within the queer community, I think feel a little bit of that. I'm afraid to ask questions. What if I say the wrong thing? What if you do get offended with me when I'm just trying to have a conversation? And so I think that is something that's really valuable in Clem.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going for with her character, to be kind of like the voice of people who didn't want to ask those questions, which was like the whole purpose of the book, was to be an educator. So
and it definitely succeeds on that level, in that it's designed to speak for, answer questions as they're developing character. So you could, if you were someone who had questions of your own, you could sit and read this and then go ask questions of somebody and say, hey, I was reading this book and they say this. Is that true?
I think that there's a necessity to educate. I don't think that every trans person or every marginalized community should be responsible for educating everybody who asks them a question, which is part of the purpose of writing this book, because I think those who do want to educate, there's a time and a place for that. So I wanted to kind of make a character who wasn't afraid to ask those questions, but also do it in a way that's like, hey, maybe don't do this in real life.
Yeah, right. Well, there's and maybe before I start running through some of the questions that Clem has, you should introduce us to the supporting cast. By the way, I like Moss.
Moss is a fan favorite, I think. So the second main character that we have is Orion, who is a trans man and non-binary. And a lot of Orion's identity was based off of my own identity because that was what I could speak on. I can't speak on the experiences of trans women or trans femme non-binary people. That's not in my experiences, obviously, but we do have a lot of shared experiences, and I feel like I wanted to address a bunch of different people's perspectives. So the main perspective of this was Orion's initially. And he's kind of, while Clementine is very fiery and headstrong, he's very like not having it. And I think like their dynamic it was very easy to write because they bounce off of each other so well. And he kind of recognized that like a bunch of different perspectives could be beneficial in this situation, which brings us to Delilah and Moss and Lout. Delilah is, it changed around a couple times. Delilah is a trans woman character who does the majority of the technical explanations surrounding these are the textbook definitions of what being transgender is. And I wanted her, because I wanted the story to have a bunch of different perspectives and make it known that not every trans person knows everything about being trans, because we can only speak from our experiences. So I wanted Delilah to be the character who has done her own research and knows the technicalities. So that's why we mainly see her filling up pages with this information. And then while the other characters are chiming in like, this is actually true too. And I think Delilah is very much the voice of reason in the story. And then Moss and Lout are the chaos gremlins of the cast.
Yep.
I think Moss is the voice of people who just do not care what the haters have to say. And I think that's true for a lot of, especially people in my circles, they don't want to hear the negatives of what people have to say, and that's extremely valid. And so that's why I wanted to give them a voice in the book. So I kind of wanted this balance of like, it's important to educate yourselves and ask questions, but also be respectful of people and their identities, regardless if you agree with them or not. So that's why I wanted to have a couple characters who were like, you can't say that. And then another character being like, here's why.
For people who are perhaps not accustomed to having these conversations, it's pretty unlikely that you're going to be brought into a situation like that with, 4 or 5 people who can bounce off one another and give you different perspectives. The odds are pretty good that it's just somebody sitting down with you over coffee or something, and or after class and saying, okay, so what's the deal with the pronouns? What do I need to know? I loved at one point Clem says, and this is her sort of putting her foot in her own mouth, but she says, well, you don't look male. And that's the sort of thing that I think people are rightly afraid of saying. People have their own ideas about gender, what it is, what it should be, what they've been taught. Yeah. And something like that makes perfect sense in their context, and they're not aware of how much it hurts to hear that.
Yeah.
So how did you decide on the questions that Clem eventually would ask? Or did it just kind of come organically?
The original version of this story was written and drawn in about 2 weeks as a final project for a 2D design class, funny enough. So I think I developed most of the questions there. I don't remember my thought process behind it, but I think while I was developing the story for the updated version, I wanted to include a lot of the questions that I just heard on the internet or heard well-intentioned people ask me, and kind of lean into the gender stereotypes and the gender norms that we're so accustomed to and like address them in a personified way. So there's a lot of them like, you don't look male, or why do you need he, they pronouns?
Right.
Things like that. So I wanted to address as many questions as I could in such a compact form.
Now, you said that you feel most closely aligned with Orion. Do you prefer they, them pronouns as well, or what do you like?
I use he, they.
You use he.
I identify as transmasc and non-binary. So my gender identity is non-binary. but I prefer masculine leaning connotations to that, if that makes sense. And usually I am guilty of basing the main characters of my story off of myself, in certain respects. Like obviously they're not me, but in the case of Orion, I wanted the main perspective of these explanations to come from somebody with my own experiences.
Orion, though, is a little laid back when it comes to schoolwork
Yes.
and work ethic. Because I can't imagine that you're somebody who could turn out a product like this and be that way. Or is that something you share with Orion?
No, Orion, apart from identity, Orion and I are completely different people.
This episode of Transqat is sponsored by The Book Barn. Located on Niantic Bay, The Book Barn has 3 locations, all within a mile of each other. They've been a Connecticut landmark since 1988. The Book Barn buys 10 to 15,000 used books a week. You can find your favorite novel for $4. Mass market paperbacks are $1. Come find your favorite author or discover something new. There's gorgeous art on display. There are cats and goats and helpful staff in blue t-shirts and a real functioning TARDIS. Well, sort of. Learn more at bookbarnniantic.com or follow them at bookbarnniantic on Instagram. Also, mark your calendars for their annual sale. 30% off their already low prices. The sale runs from October 10th to the 18th. Bring your tote bags. You're going to need them.
In terms of work ethic, and you said this had started as a class project. Where was that? What school were you at when you conceived of this idea?
I was in a community college, a dual credit student, which meant I was a high schooler taking college courses. And the final project for a 2D design class was to make a book, and that could be like making a little flip book, like binding your own little like short story or whatever. And me, being an overachiever, thought I'm gonna make an entire book and print it myself as a graphic novel, which I spent all day every day working on. And it was printed in like a little spiral bound at Office Depot. And I'm very proud of it, to be honest.
Yeah.
And then later down the line, after I moved on from that community college, I was thinking about what my senior project should be. And I thought, hey, that was actually kind of fun to do. What if I did it in a larger scale and actually produced it?
Now, did you draw and then scan, or were you working digitally to begin with? What was your process like?
I essentially stole my mom's iPad, and I used a drawing app.
We won't tell her.
Yeah, we won't tell her. I say stole. She gave it to me, but it's fine. And I used a drawing app with my finger, so I just drew it like on the screen, and I printed it through the website Blurb. So after I was done drawing all of the pages, we uploaded them onto the website. And
the Blurb formats it and all for there?
We had to. I spent a couple hours formatting it on the website. Formatting is not my strong suit, but somehow I managed to do it.
The idea is eventually to have an editor working with you on this stuff. Who are your influences in terms of graphic design, in terms of graphic novels? And
as a kid, I was very into graphic novels. That was all I read. And there were a couple different artists that come to mind. CC Bell was a big one.
CC Bell did Defo, right?
Yes.
I love that graphic novel.
It's a great graphic novel.
Yeah.
I may be pronouncing this wrong. Raina Telgemeier.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yes. I think those were my main influences as a child. And then as I got older, I started reading webcomics. And I was just fascinated with people's art styles and how they could draw characters that looked like they were moving when they weren't. And I honestly have always been drawing, and I've always tried to improve my art by seeing how other people draw.
At the heart of your story, and I don't want there to be any spoilers, but there is a research project that, in addition to the conversation about what are questions that are okay to ask, provides a bit of a history lesson So who are we researching?
The subject of their research paper is Sylvia Rivera.
So for folks who might not know, tell us who that is and why you went with Sylvia.
Sylvia Rivera was a transgender and homeless activist in the 1960s. She was a big influence in the Stonewall riots, which was essentially what kicked off Pride Month. She was a massive influence in the transgender community because she worked closely with trying to fight for gay rights, only to be excluded from those gay rights. And I included her in the story, admittedly, as a couple years younger than I am now, was just Googling influential trans people in history. But I ended up delving really deep into her biography, and I became very fascinated with just her life. And I think she was a good fit for this book because it's a history lesson, but it's also not that far back in history, and it's highlighting like this is why we need trans rights, because this is what people have gone through and this is what people have fought for.
Have you seen, and I will link to this in the show notes, have you seen the clip of Sylvia just enraged on the stage as she was being shooed off and excluded, as you say?
Hi, lady. Y'all better quiet down.
She's just screaming at the crowd that, you know, I was part of what brought you here and you're not listening.
I didn't know it was an actual clip. I saw photos.
One of the things that I love about this book is that for a lot of trans folks, when we are asked questions, those questions might be coming at a time when I've just had a really bad day and I don't feel like speaking on behalf of the trans nation. Thank you. Or if somebody does ask a question that comes across as being offensive, I don't know that I have the energy to just say, hey, look, that was a really hurtful question. Have you had experiences like that where people are making demands on you that you're not ready to meet?
In my personal experience, I don't believe I have. I've heard secondary, like people who have talked about the trans community without knowing that I'm trans, but being homeschooled, I wasn't out in public much. And I didn't come out fully until we were moving, and I was just fully detached from where I was and didn't have a lot of social interactions.
Tell me about that journey for you. When, you know, how old were you when you first started realizing that you were non-binary? What's that journey been like?
Like I said, was kind of I was homeschooled, so I wasn't surrounded by peers a lot. And I said, while I was questioning things, I think I would have discovered things a lot earlier had I had gender norms kind of imposed on me as like, you know, peer pressure, society expectations. But because I was homeschooled, I was just kind of free to be myself, regardless of like, you know, I played with Legos, I played with My Little Pony dolls. It just didn't matter. And then at about 16, admittedly, I was listening to a song with male vocals and I was picturing myself singing the song. I was like, hey, that's kind of cool. And that kind of led to, hey, what if I cut my hair? What if I dressed more masculine? What if I went by different pronouns? And I struggled a lot with imposter syndrome, which I think is very common because I didn't ever plan to, you know, fully transition, which was another topic that I wanted to discuss in the book. So I felt like, hey, maybe I'm not actually like trans enough. But slowly I started to realize, like, kind of detaching myself from all of these society expectations and like norms and going like, hey, it's not actually linear. It's not actually like I'm not moving boxes, I'm creating my own, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm assuming from the way you're telling the story and from the dedication of your book that your folks were very supportive.
I am very lucky that my parents are extremely supportive. My mom especially didn't fully understand. I don't think she still does, but she's respectful, and both of my parents were very supportive while I was writing this book. And also when I gave them multiple PowerPoint presentations going, keep in mind, I still thought I was cis at this point. Here's all these transgender identities and what they mean. PowerPoint presentation.
Wow.
And made them sit through that for about an hour.
Well, they say, and I'm saying this as a former teacher, they say that the best way to learn something is to teach it. So you processing that information in order to present it to your folks makes perfect sense to me. That had to have been a challenge, though, as you say, because you've got these ideas of what society will be putting on you in terms of gender expectations, but because you're somewhat secluded, being homeschooled, you don't actually know what those expectations are.
It was definitely a challenge because I think we all, like, society influences us whether we're actually out in society or not. But I think I was learning those expectations while unlearning them at the same time. And I was kind of realizing, like, how to be myself, and also because I was starting to go to community college at this point, so I was learning to be myself while being put in a situation where there might be more expectations around that. So I think I in a way kind of learned how to be transgender and like dress the part, and then unlearned how to reinforce those stereotypes, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it sounds like you were almost wholly focused on yourself. So you make this decision, I'm going to cut my hair a little more mask, I'm going to change my wardrobe a bit. And it's not because oppositional people say that, trans youth are just doing this to get attention, or because they think that's, what's trendy at the moment. And what you're saying is that, no, this was something I did for myself, and I really wasn't able to bounce these presentations off other people.
Yeah, I overthink everything. I think a lot, like the majority of my time I'm in my head going like, am I trans? Am I not? Am I, like, I'm a very like introspective person, I suppose. So I think part of my learning and unlearning experience is being out in the world, listening to people, hearing their experiences, and just also experiencing life outside of that introspection, and just being myself, forgetting any notion of gender.
Right.
And I think it's important to kind of not detach yourself from your identity, obviously, but to kind of embody the person who, like, regardless of gender, just kind of being a human being, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Out in school, do you find that the world is more accepting than you anticipated? And we have to point out that, college is not the real world yet.
Yes.
But do you find that folks are more accepting than you thought, or less accepting? I lost the word I wanted.
I think in the people that I have surrounded myself with, absolutely way more accepting, because part of my introspection is, hearing people's potential doubts in my head. And so when I started making friends at school and surrounding myself with more peers, I was honestly surprised at, like, oh yeah, you can absolutely identify as that. Why couldn't you? I'm like, well, I kind of thought you wouldn't accept me for that. So it's
what a relief.
Yeah. And it's like I noticed myself kind of explaining things to other people that I thought were just going to be in my head all the time, because I didn't think that they would actually understand what I was saying, if that makes sense.
And I imagine it gives you a chance to listen to their stories as well and see commonalities.
Yeah.
Transqat is on the air. The program will be broadcast on WESU 88.1 FM, Middletown, Connecticut, beginning Tuesday, September 9th. Transqat has acquired the coveted 1 to 2 a.m. slot.
And there was much rejoicing.
You can listen either very late Monday night or ridiculously early Tuesday morning, depending on your perspective. It's an honor to be part of WESU's programming. The station's first official broadcast was on November 9th, 1939. That means they're only a few years away from their 90th anniversary. So, if you find yourself awake and within 90 miles or so of Wesleyan's Exley Science Center, tune in to WESU 88.1 FM.
Let's just segue on back to this. Can you give me a page, a panel that you're particularly proud of or that was particularly challenging?
There's one definitely was the biggest challenge. Most of these pages, I averaged about 2 pages a day in drawing. My senior year was just spent on this pretty much. I did other stuff, of course, but most of my time was spent on this. So I averaged about 2 pages a day, but there's one page that took me 3 days to complete, just that one page. And that's page 20, the introduction of Delilah and Moss and Lout. I don't know what it was about this page, probably all of the detail, but it was so many layers that my drawing app had to separate the drawing into 3 different documents.
So what we're looking at is the floor of a classroom and our group of gender expansive people sort of huddled underneath as they're having their conversations. It certainly has more background.
I honestly forgot that I wasn't making a lot of detail in the backgrounds, and I was just like, oh, goody, I get to draw a background, and then realized my mistake a couple hours later when I was like, this is going to take me forever. Most of the time while I was drawing this, I was thinking, like, I probably shouldn't have added so much detail into the shading of these characters, but I'm committed now.
Yeah.
But yeah, this page definitely took me the longest.
You have in our crew of friends there, you have a degree of racial diversity, ethnic diversity, body type diversity. How do you come to that? To, okay, this person is going to be this ethnicity, and here's how I'm going to express that in drawing.
I think as an artist, I've always drawn all different kinds of people because, like, I see people out in the world and like, oh, some, like, you know, this is what people look like, and I want people to feel represented. Obviously, I cannot write about people's experience who are a different race than I am. Like, I can't write a book about their struggles because obviously that's not something that I can speak on. But nevertheless, I wanted every story that I write, anybody can see themselves in a character and know that they're welcome in these worlds. So I think from the get-go, I wanted it to be a diverse cast because, you know, gender non-conforming people aren't just going to be white, like 14-year-old white people, you know, like there's going to be a variation in what these people look like. But I also wanted to be careful of reinforcing any racial stereotypes of like, this person needs to like know everything, this person is like stupid, you know, like I did not want any stereotypes to be reinforced in my work. But I think the most important thing was making every character a full person, not just a personification of something.
Did you run any of that by anyone ahead of time and say, hey, look, just make sure there's nothing offensive here for me?
I did run it by one of my genderqueer friends over the information. I really wish I did run it by people of different ethnicities and races, but I didn't know anyone personally, and I didn't want to kind of approach it, if that makes sense. In the future, I will absolutely do that because it's not a good thing not to.
Well, I occasionally do that freelance for Penguin Random House. If somebody is writing a book for them that involves some queer subject and the author isn't necessarily queer themselves, they send me the book and I read through and send them notes. And so even, you know, top of the line professional authors, as you say, you've only got your own experience that you can draw on. And so they will farm these books out and say, hey, just make sure we're crossing all the T's and dotting the I's here. So that it's a valuable step. and
Absolutely.
not just because it makes me money.
I know. We're all struggling financially right now. My 23-ounce can of decaf at Stop & Shop is currently $17.49. I was promised grocery prices would drop on day one.
Groceries. It's a very simple word, groceries. Like almost, who uses the word? I started using the word, the groceries.
And I have more complaints on grocery. The word grocery, it's sort of simple word, but it sort of means like everything you eat. The stomach is speaking bacon and things going up double, triple, quadruple.
Guess that's not happening. So I get it. Money's tight. But if you listen to Transqat, consider supporting the show. You can donate at transqat.com/support. You can purchase Transqat merch at the store. And businesses, especially queer-owned and queer-friendly businesses, sponsor the show. My rates are Crazy Eddie low.
Get it now, because Crazy Eddie can't be beat. Crazy Eddie, his prices are insane.
1978.
I'm assuming you have ideas for other projects that you might follow in the future?
Yeah, so my main outlet of creativity is novel writing, and I absolutely have a couple of different projects that I'm excited to move forward with. The farthest one along is a novel that I've been working on for about 2 years, and while I'm in school, I probably won't pursue publication, but once I'm graduated, that will probably be the first book that I publish.
Can you watch how I do this segue here? Can you spill the tea on it? See what I did there?
Yeah, so this book is featuring a genderqueer protagonist, but it's not about educating people on genderqueer identities. It is a kind of fantasy story about a magical bakery and someone who goes to be a baker's apprentice and accidentally upheaves the magical government.
Will there be cookies involved in this? Because that would bring me in to read it, as if you could guarantee there would be cookies.
There are definitely cookies mentioned.
Okay. All right. I'm in. I am in. Is there a part, and this is hard with a graphic novel, but I often ask my author guests about this. Is there a passage, some pages that you might be willing to read out loud for us? Maybe some of the questions. I'm looking at starting on 37.
Okay.
And if you want, I could be Clem, and you.
Okay.
All right. Are you a boy or a girl?
I'm a girl, trans girl to be precise.
But then, what were you born as?
Well, I know you're looking for me to say I was born male, but the truth is I really was born a girl. People just didn't know it.
But you just said you're trans. See, this is why it's so confusing.
I know. Let me try to explain it the best way I know how. By dividing the concept of gender into 3 threads: biological sex, gender identity, and gender roles. Most people assume that all of these threads are always intertwined in everybody, but that's not the case at all. Biological sex is the chromosome someone is born with. Your chromosomes determine a lot about your physiology. There are many variations of chromosomes, but for the sake of this discussion, I'll narrow it down to XX and XY, female and male. You were born with XX chromosomes, correct?
Well, if that's female, then yeah. With a little sign pointing to Clem says, barely passed biology.
Right, and you identify as a woman. Your biological sex and gender identity threads are intertwined, making you cisgender.
Whoa, time out. I don't choose to be a woman. I just am.
Precisely. That leads me to the second thread, gender identity. This is how your mind perceives yourself.
That's like the whole gender is fake thing, right?
Actually, that's a well-intentioned myth. Gender is real. It's neurological. You don't have any more control of this than you do over your biological sex. So again, your biological and neurological threads are connected. That makes you cis or cisgender. Mine, however, are not. When this happens, it's called being transgender. But my biological sex doesn't discount my neurological gender. People like to assume these threads are always intertwined. That's why, when I was born, they assumed I was a boy because of my sex.
But, I mean, respectfully, you don't look trans at all. How could you be born male?
There are many ways to be trans. Some people take hormone replacement therapy and have surgery, but you don't need those in order to be trans. Some people are farther along in their transition. Others choose not to transition or only partly transition. So there's no one way to look trans.
I could see, and maybe this was just sort of the back and forth of that section, I could see this being reworked as a play at some point.
That would be cool.
You know, because the artwork is terrific, and it will particularly be appealing to people who are given to manga, because you have some of those tropes. But hearing the voices as different actors, as different, you know, sounding and presentation wise, I think that could be really powerful too. So quit school and become a playwright. Your parents are going to be so angry with me. One of the things that is sort of a throwaway line in your graphic novel somewhere that is actually a very real part of the rhetoric of the right is that queer is not contagious.
Right.
Would it be possible for somebody who is cisgender, heterosexual, to sit down and read your graphic novel and not be converted?
It is absolutely possible.
What?
I think the second that they read it, they're going to be trans and gay. But yeah, I think a very, very important thing for people to know is that knowledge isn't going to affect you as your identity. It'll affect the way you perceive the world, but it's not going to affect your idea and conception of yourself, because that is a very important part of the human being, is their own perception of themselves. And I think if a trans person who is very deep in the closet reads something like this and starts to realize it, that is not the same as a cisgender person reading it and going, oh, huh, okay.
Yeah, interesting. But
people aren't gonna like flip a switch the second that they learn something new.
Huh. So then putting all that energy into book bans might not be such a great idea. There might not be the return on investment that they're hoping for.
Yeah. In my very limited experience, to my personal opinion of that is the purpose of banning books is to make sure that this knowledge doesn't affect people, in that it makes them see other perspectives. So they're more susceptible to being influenced by like, oh, these people are bad. And because we never hear from these people, it's very easy to say that they're bad.
Right. When you have nothing to counterbalance it.
Yeah.
Is this a book you would like to see in school libraries and public libraries? Is that?
I would love to see this in school. It has actually been approached by schools asking to be in their libraries, which I think is incredible, because I can just imagine a kid reading this and starting to think about, hey, maybe this applies to me, or hey, maybe this applies to my friend and I can help them if they have questions. And I would love to see people benefiting from learning about this stuff, whether it's from my book or from someone else's book.
Thank you so much for this. I really enjoyed this book. I hope lots of folks get a chance to see it, because I think it will make a difference.
Thank you so much.
Next up on Transqat, we have a conversation with Jordan Anderson. Jordan is a sex therapist and relational therapist from the South Shore Family Health Collective in Quincy, Massachusetts. If you enjoyed this conversation with Lucian, and I hope you did, consider checking out some episodes with other graphic novelists. Episode 6, yes, more than 90 episodes back, I spoke with Jadzia Axelrod, the author of the DC graphic novel Galaxy, the Prettiest Star. Episode 9 was with Dana Simpson, the artist and writer of Phoebe and Her Unicorn, which is set to release its 22nd volume of collected strips next month. And episode 57 was with Eric Orner, the political cartoonist and author-writer of the graphic novel Smart Guy, The Life and Times of Barney Frank. Housekeeping items. On Wednesday, October 8th, I'll be presenting a virtual program on digital literacy for the Bloomfield Public Library. It's entitled Check Your Sources, Transgender Topics in the News. You can register at bplct.org. Lastly, I'll be in P-Town on Friday, October 24th for Trans Week. I'm on the schedule for a morning session where I'll be setting up the recording gear and talking with attendees about their stories. This has been Transqat. I'm Claire McCarthy. Thank you for listening, and let's talk soon.
This is Sadie McCarthy. I'm Claire's niece.
And you've just been listening to Transqat. It is made by one of my favorite people in the world, Claire McCarthy.
Transqat is a production of Transqat Enterprises, LLC.
Copyright 2023, all rights reserved.
Join us on the web at transqat.com.
That's TRANSQAT.com.
QAT.com.
QAT.com.
There you'll find links to Transqat, the blog,
writing projects,
speaking engagements,
and our PayPal donations page.
Please consider supporting our mission with your monkeys.
Monies.
Your monies. Your monies.
Not monkeys.
Please consider supporting our mission with your monies. Any monkeys will be gratefully received as well.
Follow Transqat on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube.
On TikTok, we are at The Real Transqat.
Want to tell your story on air?
Or ask Claire a question?
What is the deal?
She has all the answers.
Or suggest a guest or topic for an upcoming episode.
Use the contact page at the website
or email her directly at crmtranscat@gmail.com.
crmtranscat@gmail.com.
And thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening. Bye.